Ethan hadn't slept. Not really. After the vision, he spent the night walking in circles in his small apartment above the firehouse gym. His hands trembled as he scrolled through news archives and structural reports on the Kenmore Bridge. Nothing suggested danger. The bridge had passed inspections. But the feeling, no, the certainty, wouldn't go away. Something terrible was coming. By morning, the town was alive with excitement. Dozens gathered near the starting line, city banners waving in the breeze. Ethan arrived early, eyes darting across the faces of children, volunteers, off-duty nurses, teachers, and a few fellow firefighters, including his longtime friend Marcus, a jokester with a loud laugh and an unshakable trust in the system. "Man, you look like hell," Marcus said, slapping Ethan on the back. "You running or fleeing from demons?" Ethan forced a laugh. "Maybe both." He tried again to talk to the event coordinator, a woman named Trish who managed city events. "Please. I need you to at least delay the race. Something's going to happen. The bridge isn't safe." Trish narrowed her eyes. "Ethan, we had engineers go over that thing 2 weeks ago. It's solid. You're under stress, I get it. But you can't scare people with this." His words fell on deaf ears. He could feel it, like the atmosphere just before a storm, charged, heavy. Every sound around him seemed louder. Every movement slower. Then came the horn. The race began. People started running, laughing, cheering. Marcus jogged past him with a grin. "See you on the other side." Ethan froze. The bridge loomed ahead, rusted bolts, trembling railings, and below it, the river moved lazily, like it had no idea what was about to happen. He stepped forward, but something in him screamed. Not a voice. A sensation. A pressure in his chest. Stop. Not one more step. And then, it began. A loud metallic groan echoed through the air. Screams replaced laughter. The center of the bridge caved in. Like a mouth opening wide, swallowing runners into its rusted throat. One side buckled. People slid, grasping for anything. Marcus disappeared into the chaos. Ethan ran, but not toward the bridge, away from it, toward the support trucks. He grabbed the radio from a startled volunteer. "Send every available unit. The bridge collapsed. We need EMTs now." Within minutes, sirens howled. Smoke and dust hung in the air like fog. From a distance, the broken bridge looked like a twisted skeleton. Survivors clung to the edges or floated in the river, bleeding, crying. Others weren't so lucky. Hours passed in a blur. Ethan pulled 2 people from the water. He watched as a mother screamed for her son. He found Marcus, alive, barely, with a shattered leg and a look of pure disbelief. That night, the media flooded Ashford. Breaking. Bridge collapse at charity race leaves 9 dead, dozens injured. The headlines mirrored his vision exactly. The numbers, the faces, even the time. Reporters called it a tragic failure of infrastructure. Officials blamed an unnoticed fault line in the support beams. But Ethan knew better. He had seen it. And deep down, something else gnawed at him. He wasn't safe. None of them were. The survivors. Trish, Marcus, a teenage volunteer named Lily, a paramedic named Joel, and a retired math teacher who ran every year, Mr. Higgins, were shaken, but alive. At first, they clung to gratitude. "We were lucky," Lily said. "Some kind of miracle." But Ethan didn't believe in luck. Not anymore. 3 days later, as he sat alone on his couch, trying to shut out the sounds of collapsing steel still echoing in his head, he noticed something strange on the news. Mr. Higgins had died. Not from the collapse. Not from injuries. He slipped on his porch stairs. A simple fall. But the police report mentioned something odd: the railing had broken clean off in his hand. Like it had been cut. Ethan stared at the screen. The death had begun. And it was only the beginning. Ethan spent the entire funeral standing beneath the shadow of an old oak tree, away from the others. Mr. Higgins's death had been treated as a sad coincidence. At 72, a widower with high blood pressure, slipping on wooden steps could seem like just bad luck. But Ethan knew better. The expression frozen on the old teacher's face, a mix of shock and fear, wasn't from a simple fall. It was the look of someone who had seen death coming. After the burial, Ethan gathered the other survivors at his house. One by one. Marcus, still on crutches. Trish, nervous and defensive. Lily, the quiet young volunteer with wide eyes. Joel, the paramedic, the most skeptical of them all. Ethan closed the curtains and turned on a single lamp. The mood was tense. "You might think I've lost it," he began, "but what happened on the bridge wasn't just an accident. I saw it before it happened. In detail. Every sound. Every collapse. And now. Someone's already dead." Joel scoffed. "You're saying a vision showed you the bridge collapse?" "Yes. And more than that. I think we weren't supposed to survive. And now something's correcting that." Trish crossed her arms. "This is morbid. I get the trauma. We're all in shock. But this sounds like a horror movie theory." Ethan stood up slowly. "And what about Mr. Higgins? Was he just in shock too? That wasn't a simple stumble. It was like the ground was pulled out from under him." The silence that followed wasn't agreement, it was fear. A shadow formed in that room, and none of them wanted to be the next. 2 days later, Ethan tried to organize his thoughts. He created a timeline with photos of the survivors and marked the exact moments each of them had crossed the bridge. He was convinced death was following them in the order they escaped. Mr. Higgins had been the first to cross the safe part of the bridge. The next was Trish. And that's when death returned. That morning, Trish was in her office at City Hall, reviewing reports from the accident. She still blamed herself, though she wouldn't admit it. She was alone, sipping coffee, when her laptop froze. Black screen. A creak from the ceiling. She looked up, confused. The central air system made a strange metallic hum. She stood to call maintenance. At that exact moment, a screw came loose from a panel above her desk. The entire ventilation unit, over 100 pounds, fell. But it didn't hit her immediately. It fell at an angle, crashing into a cabinet that toppled. She stumbled backward, bumping into the water cooler, spilling water onto the floor. She tried to steady herself, and slipped. Lying on the wet floor, ankle twisted, she tried to crawl away. The light flickered. The AC made a popping sound. A spark leapt from the breaker box, hitting the water-soaked tile. The shock was nearly silent. Trish's body seized. Arched. Then, fell still. Later, it was ruled a fatal electrical accident caused by structural failure and moisture exposure. But Ethan knew, it was her death. He arrived at the building minutes later, after seeing the breaking news alert on his phone. He stood frozen in the hallway, a cold chill crawling up his spine. Lily appeared beside him, eyes damp. "She was always afraid of dying alone," she whispered. Ethan didn't reply. But in his mind, the list moved on. Next, was Joel. In the days that followed, Ethan tried everything, mapping the pattern, avoiding the other survivors, even hiding out. But the feeling never left. It was as if reality itself had been breached by something unseen. A presence with no face, but with purpose. As the headlines faded and the city slowly returned to normal, Ethan knew, the nightmare was just beginning. Death had awakened. And it was following the list. One by one. The walls of Ethan's apartment were now covered with notes, photographs, and newspaper clippings. Lines of red string connected faces and times, a chaotic map of obsession. But Ethan wasn't crazy. He was desperate. 3 names were already marked with a red X: Mr. Higgins, Trish, Joel. The last one had just happened. Joel, the paramedic who didn't believe in anything he couldn't explain, had died in the most irrational of ways, a freak gym accident. The cable on a weight machine snapped mid-rep, launching 120 pounds into his throat. Clean. Precise. Like a guillotine. Like a message. Ethan had seen him just hours before. "I don't care what pattern you think you see," Joel had said. "Life doesn't work like that. People die every day. You should get help." But now Joel was gone. 3 gone. 4 remained. Ethan. Marcus. Lily. And a 4th. A young man named Rami, a runner who had helped clear the bridge route and fled early from the collapse. Ethan hadn't even noticed him before, but now, he was next in line. He had to warn him. Ethan found Rami working at a local auto shop. Grease-stained shirt, earbuds in, completely unaware of the ticking clock above his head. "Rami. I need to talk to you. It's important. It's about the bridge." Rami blinked. "The collapse? Man, I already gave a statement. We're all lucky to be alive." "No," Ethan said, out of breath. "We weren't supposed to survive. That's the point." Rami gave him a confused look, then chuckled nervously. "You're one of those conspiracy guys." But Ethan's eyes were sharp, haunted. "You're next. Trust me. Death is following us, in the exact order we escaped." Rami paused. The air shifted. "Okay," he said slowly. "Let's say you're right. What do we do?" Ethan didn't have an answer. That was the truth. That night, Ethan barely slept. He watched every second of the bridge collapse footage, compared survivor interviews, even mapped their walking positions. And then he saw it. A detail he had missed. The pattern wasn't just about who escaped first, it was how they moved. Their choices. The detours. The seconds stolen from fate. The map wasn't linear. It curved, twisted, like a spiral. Death was patient. It wasn't just cleaning up loose ends. It was replaying their steps. Rami's death came the next morning. He had decided to stay home, just in case. Avoid danger. No tools, no cars, no sharp objects. But death doesn't need violence. It needs timing. Rami fell asleep on the couch, exhausted. Left the gas stove on after reheating food. A slow leak. Silent. Invisible. By the time he woke up, if he woke up, the room was already filled. One click. One spark. That's all it took. The explosion shattered every window in the building. When Ethan arrived, the street was blocked with fire trucks and yellow tape. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stared at the blackened sky and whispered, "She's not just killing us, she's watching us." Back at his apartment, Ethan crossed out another name. Only 3 were left. Lily. Marcus. And himself. He began recording voice memos, documenting everything. It's not random. She follows a rhythm. A logic. Like a composer writing a symphony of death. Maybe if I figure out the rest of the song, I can change the ending. But something was wrong. The clock on his wall stopped. 3:33 a.m. The same time his vision had ended. The silence in the apartment became unbearable. Not empty, dense. As if the air itself held breath. He reached for his phone. Battery dead. Unplugged. The power flickered. Then, the floor creaked behind him. He turned quickly, but saw nothing. Or maybe, something moved, just outside the edge of the mirror. Ethan steadied his breathing. The list was almost complete. And time was running out. Ethan's mind raced as he sifted through articles, reports, and archives on his laptop. Every headline, every news clip about fatal accidents involving survivors from other disasters, bore the same chilling pattern. Stories buried under the surface, overlooked by the masses, but not by him. He called Marcus and Lily, arranging a secret meeting at a small diner on the outskirts of town. "We're not the first," Ethan whispered, voice tense. "People have survived disasters before. Plane crashes, fires, floods, only to die later in random ways. It's a cycle. Death cycle." Marcus rubbed his temples. "You think death is chasing them?" Lily nodded, eyes wide. "It's like she's a force, a presence that won't be denied. We can't outrun it by running. We have to trick it." Ethan pulled out the timeline he had painstakingly assembled, a complex web of names, dates, and events. "If we can change the order, switch places, stay together, avoid known triggers. Maybe we can confuse her." They tried everything. That night, Lily and Ethan swapped apartments. Marcus stayed with friends. Rami's name was crossed out, a grim reminder of what happened when no precautions were taken. For a brief moment, hope flickered. But death was relentless. Marcus's accident was sudden. He was on a hiking trail with friends, trying to enjoy the brief sunlight. A loose rock dislodged, or was pushed. He fell. The fall wasn't fatal at first. But as he tried to climb back up, a sudden storm hit. Lightning struck a nearby tree, which crashed down on him. When Ethan heard, his hands trembled. They weren't safe. Meanwhile, Ethan and Lily pored over every possible clue. Internet forums, local legends, police files, searching for anything that might explain or disrupt the pattern. Then, a breakthrough. An old urban myth about a death's list, a curse that targeted survivors, making sure the balance was restored. A ritual was said to break it, but details were vague, scattered across obscure sites. Desperation pushed them to try. They gathered in Ethan's apartment under a blood-red moon, circling candles and whispering the ritual's words. The air grew heavy. A sudden draft blew out the candles. Silence. Then a whisper. "You cannot escape." Lily's eyes filled with tears. Ethan clenched his fists. The next day, news broke of another unexplained death. A man, tied to a disaster years ago, found lifeless in his home. The message was clear. The cycle was tightening its grip. And Ethan felt it closing in. He stared at the clock. 3:33 a.m. The hour when the nightmare began. The silence was deafening. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, death waited. Ethan and Lily met in a rundown motel room far from the city lights. Shadows danced on peeling wallpaper, flickering from the single bulb overhead. Both looked exhausted, haunted by sleepless nights and the gnawing fear that death was closer than ever. "We have to do this," Ethan said, voice strained but determined. "One last plan. If we can outsmart her, maybe, just maybe, we survive." Lily nodded, clutching a small box of items they'd gathered from their research. Charms, herbs, pieces of paper with cryptic symbols. They called it the final ritual. The night was thick with tension. Every sound was amplified, the distant howl of a stray dog, the creak of floorboards, the rhythmic ticking of the clock. At exactly 3:33 a.m., Ethan began chanting the incantation, voice low and steady. Lily joined him, her words trembling but firm. The room pulsed with energy, a strange vibration that made the hairs on their arms stand up. Suddenly, the power cut. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Ethan's breath caught. He reached for Lily's hand. A cold breeze brushed past them, chilling to the bone. Then silence. Minutes stretched into eternity. No wind. No voices. No movement. For a fleeting moment, hope sparked. Maybe the ritual had worked. But then. A soft, barely audible whisper echoed through the room. You cannot hide. Lily's eyes widened. Ethan's heart hammered. The shadows thickened, creeping closer. They were not alone. Desperate, Ethan grabbed a flashlight and swept it through the darkness. Nothing. Just their trembling reflections in the cracked mirror. But something unseen lingered. The feeling of being watched. Hours passed. The first rays of dawn crept through the window. They were still alive. For now. Ethan exhaled, exhausted but relieved. He looked at Lily. We did it. We survived. She nodded, but her eyes betrayed her doubt. Because deep down, they both knew. This was only temporary. Death was patient. And it never forgot. The clock ticked on. The cycle was broken, but the war was far from over. Months had passed. Ethan was somewhere else now, a quieter town, a different job, a life he tried to rebuild. But peace was a fragile illusion. He sat alone in a small cafe, the soft murmur of conversation and the clinking of cups around him. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Outside, a light drizzle blurred the city lights. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. 3:33 p.m. He felt a familiar chill crawl down his spine. Earlier that day, Ethan had received a phone call from Lily. She was safe. She had moved on. But something in her voice unsettled him, a hesitation, a whisper of fear. He tried to shake the feeling. Later, as he walked home, Ethan noticed small signs, a shadow darting behind a corner, the faint echo of footsteps when no one was there. He stopped, heart pounding. He told himself it was paranoia. At home, he unpacked groceries, the radio playing softly. Suddenly, the power flickered. A distant crash echoed somewhere in the apartment. He spun around. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of the city. Sitting down to rest, Ethan's gaze fell on the clock. 3:33 a.m. His breath hitched. The room seemed to darken, the walls closing in. Then, a sudden sound. A snap. A gasp. A soft, almost silent thud. The neighbors would later report hearing a muffled cry, then silence. The end came quietly. No violence, no screams, just the final, inevitable breath. The fate, patient and cruel, had finally completed its cycle. And somewhere, unseen, death waited for its next call. The screen fades to black.